So the bottom line is that of all this is that I think phenotypic tests are running into problems, and as the bugs acquire more resistance mechanisms, the problems are going to get bigger. You could use the susceptibility results for an infection control decision. I'm not saying the phenotypic tests are useless or the molecular tests, but I think these are the tests that are best for epidemiological studies, for understanding what resistance mechanisms you have in your hospital. Okay. So by now you've probably heard about the new Delhi metallobeta-lactamase, and this occurring in Enterobacteriaceae. There have been a lot of stories, and I'll highlight some of those. But these are isolates that were first identified in patients from India and from Pakistan. And in those countries, isolates with this carbapenemase are becoming very common. And we're seeing patients who have been hospitalized there going to different parts of the world and carrying this resistant organism with them. And this is an MMWR reporting the first New Delhi beta-lactamase producing isolates in the United States. And since then, there has been a second MMWR, and this is a report of Enterobacteriaceae carrying the VIM carbapenemase. So I want to talk about these resistance mechanisms a little bit more. Metallobeta-lactamases are carbapenemases. They hydrolyze all beta-lactams. The only exception is ACE-TRANM. Metallobeta-lactamases pose a serious threat in terms of infection control because these are on-mobile genetic elements and they're able to disseminate to different bacteria, and bacteria with these are able to disseminate to different people. You can identify metallobeta-lactamases require zinc for their enzymatic activity, and this is a useful inhibition of zinc is useful for identifying metallobeta-lactamases and differentiating them from other carbapenemases. So there are different metallobeta-lactamases, and the one you'll see in the news right now is the New Delhi metallobeta-lactamase, or the NDM1. These are found in Enterobacteriaceae. But even before this, there was a lot of information in the literature about IMP and VIM metallobeta-lactamases. These are occurring in Pseudomonas aeruginosa and Acinetobacter species, but also Enterobacteriaceae. And a lot of these have occurred in South America and some in Europe as well. And then there are other metallobeta-lactamases, but these are much less common. The first report of the New Delhi beta-lactamase was a Swedish patient of Indian origin who had traveled to New Delhi and was infected with Klebsiella pneumoniae that was causing a UTI. NDMs have been reported in the United Kingdom, and this is actually where they got the most press. So these were reported in a Lancet article. And that Lancet article was, there was a press release that went along with it. So these are getting a lot of attention. But all of these are patients who received medical care in either India or Pakistan. And since then, NDM-producing isolates have been identified in many other countries. They've been identified in China and Japan. We heard a result of them in Israel, almost all areas of the world. In the United States, there have been 4 cases. 3 of them are reported here, and one is very recently identified, and that was in California. They occurred in different genera of different species of Enterobacteriaceae. So Enterobacter cloacae, Klebsiella pneumoniae, and E. coli. All of them were causing urinary tract infections. All of the patients had been hospitalized in India, and the most recent one had been hospitalized in Pakistan. This is the susceptibility profile of NDM1 producing isolate, and the take-home point is that these isolates test resistant to just about every antimicrobial agent. There's very little that's active against these. This is a susceptibility profile that would look just like the KPC producing isolates. So what special tests could you use to identify these isolates? As I said, the modified Hodge test would work for both KPC producers and for NDMs. And really, in the place of NDMs, you could put metallo-beta-lactamases. There is a metallo-beta-lactamase E-test. This is a test that you could use to differentiate a KPC producer from a metallo-beta-lactamase. In the laboratory at CDC, we use a broth microdilution test with imipenem and then imipenem plus chelators. And then the checkpoints assay, actually, when I first made this slide, it would only detect KPC producers, but it's since been updated and now will detect KPC producers and NDM producers as well. This is a modified Hodge test, and you'll see the isolates D and B are isolates that are producing NDM1. And these are considered positive. This is a hard read. So C is a negative control, and you'll see the indentations at D and B are not very big. And several other groups have reported that NDM producers can be hard to read with the modified Hodge test. But keep in mind that these are all isolates that test resistant to the carbapenems. There's no elevated but susceptible breakpoints. All the ones that we've seen and heard of have high carbapenem MICs. This is the metallo-beta-lactamase E-test. So this is an E-test where you have imipenem on one end and imipenem with a chelator on the other end. And so you will look for a difference in the MIC between these two. This is an example of NDM1 and the press that it's getting. So this is a story that occurred in the Washington Post, and it occurred this last Tuesday. And this has been identified as a very scary gene. And the reason I'm pointing this out is because I agree with this. I think NDM1 is very concerning, but I think KPCs are just as concerning. And I don't think KPCs are getting the respect they deserve. They deserve just as much press as these NDM1s. To illustrate that, I want to talk about some of the reasons NDM1s are perceived as scarier. Well, one is it's thought that they're more mobile. And that's because when NDM1s are found, they're always found on different genetic elements. So that means it's this resistance gene that's moving around a lot. And that is very concerning. But, KPCs, they're all over the United States. They're all over the world. I don't think we have any reason to doubt their mobility. These can obviously disseminate. So it seems like splitting hairs a little bit. Someone told me, well, NDM1s are definitely scarier because they have broader spectrum activity than KPCs. And I said, not true. NDM1s actually don't hydrolyze ACE-TRANM where KPC does. So here, the advantage, the scare factor, definitely goes to KPCs. Both of these are associated with other resistance determinants. So they're on plasmids where other resistance mechanisms are present. So when the plasmid moves, the new isolate becomes resistant to a whole bunch of drugs. So for all these reasons, I think KPC deserves just as much respect as NDM1s. You guys have been a great audience. Thank you so much.